I know you don't care, but I don't know if you saw on Facebook, but I got like 9 out of 12 with my NTA predictions correct. So,
I mean, it's a shame we didn't fucking get half the shit that happens in this episode fucking correct, isn't it? If you'd put as much focus into your Steven Universe predictions, Chris, as your NTA predictions, then maybe we wouldn't be in this fucking mess.
the NTA predictions are a bit easier.
That is. So wait, so the NTAs didn't cut halfway through to tell a random side story about watermelons? That is.
No, they did
shocking.
cut halfway through for a Love Island skit, if that helps.
Doesn't.
Is this in? Because people won't know what the NTAs is, so shall we?
No, I'm sure they could Google that, but in the meantime, cue the music. Hello and welcome to Steven University. This week we'll be discussing Change Your Mind. How long this will be, how many parts this will be, we don't know, but we're going to have some fun.
Presumably they do. I guess they've had one of your classic, hey, this is Dan. I don't think they're morbid, by the way, or however you termed them last week.
Morose.
I think they go on a while. Like last week, it took you like a minute to say. I can't even remember what you said. Oh, to say that when we recorded it, we didn't know that it was one episode.
And I got two things out in that time. I also explained there was something else.
Or was it you moaning about your predictions always being wrong?
No, that's also true. But no, it was. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, there was information we didn't have when we recorded. Blah blah blah. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Anyway,
So, but maybe this one begins with, either this is the first of 2 parts, this is the first of 3 parts, this is the entire thing as one, because fuck it.
I mean, we'll see. I guess you'll just know. I could just cut out the sentence you've just said and put it at the beginning. At the beginning of it.
That would be wonderful. You should definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So at the beginning, you'll have heard. So, Steven Universe. Finale? I mean, hell. What? I mean, yeah. That's kind of.
Should we do that? I mean, should we do that up top? Because one of my biggest takeaways was weirdly, I don't know how much crossover we've got, but just this weird parallel to Fringe Observers actually, because Fringe season 4 had a finale that felt very much like a season finale, but like a series finale, but was a season finale. I mean, this times 100. Like, this absolutely felt like the last episode of the show, and I don't necessarily, if you'd have said to me, do you want the next episode you watch to be the last? I'd be like, hell no. But after watching this, is there a slight danger that, whatever happens next has to live up to that? And I might end up in a year, 2 years going, oh man, maybe they should have ended it when, at the end of season 5. Maybe. The only thing to counter that is my absolute faith in Rebecca Sugar and the team. But did a lot, didn't it?
This is challenging it though. This is really big stuff, and I think, we might as well start with that because we usually start with sort of overall opinions. And for anyone wondering, my general overall opinion, it is an incredible piece of television with 2 extremely huge, not flaws, but problems. One of which may very well be resolved by subsequent episodes. The other of which is a little deeper, and I'll get to later. We'll get to that when we get to that, because it's about a very specific character, a very specific thing. But for me, when this finished, and it was interesting. I saw this a little later than everyone else. I didn't see this live. I saw this about an hour removed from everyone else, maybe 2. Because I'd been working that night, and I went into the Discord immediately after finishing it and was like, "So is the show just over? Was this a stealth finale they didn't tell us about?" And then we were talking about it, and then about 10 minutes later, someone else had obviously just finished the episode and was like, is this a finale? Is the show over? And then about 20 minutes after that, someone else comes into the Discord having just finished it with the exact same question. And I was just like, this is just what's going to happen now for the next, day, isn't it? People are going to be slowly watching it, slowly jumping into the Discord wanting answers. It does really, really feel like the end of something. And that is, in a weird way, to the episode's detriment, because we know there's more. But people keep trying to pinpoint it on certain things. No, I've worked it out. It's everything. Every element of this absolutely feels final. The main thrust of the narrative is wrapped up. They try to give most of the characters a moment that sort of gives them some level of closure. The way the musical theme is used bookends the show. There's a million bookends of references to, whenever you get to the last thing, you always reference the very first thing. It's just the way it works. Like in the final Harry Potter book, he talks about being in the cupboard under the stairs, and he references all this stuff that happened years before. That book is very referential to the previous books because it's the final one, and it's sort of like paying homage to the journey that it's been on. And this did a lot of that. This did a lot. I mean, if pork chops were perfect, there's so much. Do you know what I mean? There's so many references to the early episodes. I just showed Chris one, which is the moment that all the crystal gems fall into White's sort of lair, we'll call it, ship. That shot where they all land in a really cool poses is an exact one-to-one facsimile for the Sirius Steven shot where all the gems land and then Steven falls on his face in the foreground. But in this, Steven lands on his feet. And it's there's just so much of this callbacking to the... That's the sort of thing, that kind of bookending is... You just only do that on a final episode, usually. So...
Well, if you'd have said to someone, oh, name the big things you want before the show ends... I guarantee you most of the stuff people would have named is here. To see all the missing fusions, tick. For Lars and Sadie to reunite, tick. To wrap up Steven versus the Diamonds, tick. To see to kind of get a explanation as to who and what Steven is, tick. And then
the thrust of the whole show has been Steven learning to love himself and love who he is and accept who he is and not be defined by those who came before him. And that is literally the thrust in this whole episode, both emotionally and as a character arc for Steven, but also practically speaking, it's about him proving that he's him and not Pink. You know what I mean?
But also him trying to convince others not to fight by fighting and not to fight by name calling, but to talk and to thrash stuff out. Tick.
I don't want to just go home.
Crazy.
I want to stay. I want to talk. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They've not only wrapped up the main sort of not antagonist, but the main sort of conflict with Homeworld, but they've wrapped up Steven's character arc. Both emotionally and practically speaking, all the main themes of the show all came together into this one episode. I'm just I'm at a loss because they've just cut off the show while it's still not done. To the point where a lot of people are theorizing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were right, if this was the end point for the crew because they thought they were being cancelled, or Cartoon Network had indicated the end was coming, and they had decided to just end it while they could, and then have found out since they can do more. But
because if you looked at it, if you didn't know that people have said there's a season 6, there's a movie or whatever, guarantee you look at the number as the episode numbering, right, for season 5. Reunited is episode 24. Where most seasons of Steven Universe have stopped. And then there's this additional, 6 episodes, which that absolutely feels like cancelled. Okay, we'll give you more episodes to wrap up the story. Even down to the fact that some of the shit is wrapped up arguably too quickly. Feels like that.
Some stuff feels wrapped up too quickly. Chris,
so make sure you talk for a minute or two, by the way, because I'm about to just step away briefly from the mic to get something.
Sure. Well, let me hit my big criticism then, because we're there. We've reached the point. White Diamond was introduced 5 episodes ago. She's dealt with already as an antagonist. The villain we've built up for 5 seasons, sorry, was dealt with in 5 episodes. I'm sorry, that's not good. Like, here's the thing. The conclusion and the way it wrapped up is fine. It functions, it works. And the pacing of this individual episode is about fine. But how we got there, this was too quick. This was far too quick. That whole ending would have been so much more powerful if we'd have spent half a season or a season understanding White's motives, understanding White's way of thinking, learning why she was like she was, so that when Steven changes her mind, it's way more powerful. And it doesn't feel like a U-turn out of nowhere, because it does a bit. Like, they explain it, it makes sense, but it is not explored to the depth that this show normally goes into, and it is not explored with the care that this show normally goes into that stuff. White's turn is insane. I thought about it long and hard. I didn't think this when I first watched it. It didn't really occur to me, but the more I think about this episode, the more I realise that when I finished the episode, I felt there was a bittersweet element to it, because I felt like they threw away a lot of plots at the end, very handily, just like that's dealt with in 1 or 2 lines. Jasper's entire arc just thrown away in a joke at the end. Like, that's nuts to me. That's insane to me for this show. A show that has always taken so much time and taken so much care to explain everything, explore everything thoroughly. But there is a pin that can be put in that, as was pointed out to me in the Discord. There's nothing to say they can't explore some of those plots in upcoming episodes now, or go deeper into what's going on with Jasper, go deeper into the Nephrite situation, all that. Have everybody reunited with their long lost comrades, do stories about those new gems. All that is still possible. So I don't feel as robbed of that as I did initially when I watched this. But I am still a little pissed that I was robbed of a truly, properly paced out journey to White and changing White's mind. That did feel very rushed to me.
At the end of it, I felt that way, not just about White though, but kind of, not definitively, but my thing with Blue and Yellow was, now we have spent an hour after every appearance of them discussing the possibility of them coming round to Steven and who's going to come round to Steven first, and will they then fight each other. And at the end of this episode, I was like, I don't know. In my head, am very confused about whether the show did enough to make me even believe Blue and Yellow's turn, or whether I've added that as a result of the thinking and the discussing and all of that. So even Blue and Yellow,
see, now
I'm not 100% sure.
Blue and Yellow, I understand. I think they did. I think, because the thing is, it's the difference between Blue, Yellow, and White is we spent a reasonable amount of time with Blue and Yellow. We know where both of those characters are coming from. Do you know what I mean? We understand the ideology, and we understand the pressure being put on them from White. They've talked about it at length. We've had multiple conversations with them over several episodes. They're characters that were introduced quite a while ago, and we've spent enough time with them that we understand them enough to be able to follow the logic they're using to come round to Steven. And it's different for... I liked that it was different for both of them. I like that what's the thing that was said for both of them was that changed them was different. I like that they approached each one separately, but like we had time to explore it. But prior to this episode, that I understood why the characters that I have grown to know would make the decisions they made. White, like second time we've seen her. Second time we've seen her, and the first time was only 5 episodes ago. Come on, show. Come on. So it does feel like to me that everything from Reunited to now should have been its own season.
Yeah.
And that is a real shame.
What's your other one? What's your character one? Jasper?
No, that was the White one. That was the White one.
Oh, okay, so that right.
So my big sort of just plot pragmatic one was just generally that there were a lot of stories wrapped up that I was a bit sad to see wrapped up. And I talked about that quite a bit on the Discord on the night, because that was the first overriding thought I had that was negative, which was just like, I'm really...
Give us a little bit more on that then. I don't want anyone to, not everyone's on the Discord.
No,
what
I know, but I don't. The problem, the difference is that I'm not 100% as I'm not as 100% as bothered by it now because of the thing I described, which is that somebody sort of pointed out that, yes, they gave a lot of those characters moments. It's not to say they still can't explore the ideas. So I'll give you the examples that I used. I'll give you the... Go on.
Yeah, go on. No, you give us the example.
Well, the examples I was thinking of was Jasper. I think Jasper had a really interesting arc, and I really think Jasper discovering Steven is her beloved pink diamond, and that the diamonds are all on side, and that everyone is no longer fighting, is going to be a really interesting idea. Jasper's such an interesting character as well, because she came around to this idea of fusion, which is something that the Homeworld thingy, shunned, but probably won't now. So Jasper's reaction to everything that's happened, including Steven, was a huge thing to me. And the fact that Jasper just sort of saw the diamonds, then sort of lowered herself into the water, out of embarrassment, oh, it's all been fixed while I've been bubbled or whatever. That just felt like a very quick get out. But it is true to think that you could do an episode post this episode that still explores how Jasper's feeling about it all, beyond the initial reaction. Lars and Sadie was another example I gave, which is I want a real 2 lines of, you're in a rock band, you're a space pirate, I guess we've changed, is that's I want more. I think we're owed a bit more for Lars' return. And I also think we've been a bit robbed of the off colors acclimatizing to Earth now, because they're going to be acclimatizing to Earth and this new world order with a group of other gems that have just been unmonstered. Whereas I think we could have had them exploring Earth on their own first, and I would have liked that better, personally.
Well, unless they've all gone... Do we see them all still on Earth after the diamonds go?
We'll have to talk about that at the end. At the very end, we'll go into what we think might be coming next. I think that's a nice way to end this chat when we finally discuss this episode thoroughly. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for where it goes from here. But that's
I can understand somebody feeling robbed of the fusions as well, because we got them so quickly.
Yeah, and they only got so much time on screen. Nephrite being put together, and Steven having that moment with Nephrite, I think it was again played as a joke quickly, where Amethyst threw the chaps into the water, she gets in, she pops out, she's got a whole crew with her. Visually, that's an end to her story. She was separated from her crew. We didn't know if her crew were dead. She's found them again, and they're all restored to relative sanity or whatever. They're back together, and that's nice. But I think there's a lot of interesting stories to explore there. But again, like with the other examples, just because they had that moment here doesn't mean we can't still explore that going forward. So there's a lot of them that in the moment, my initial gut reaction was I've been robbed. I feel a little salty that I've been robbed of exploring these ideas. But a good, I'd say 4 out of 5 of them are actually still explorable, despite the little bookend moment. Does that make sense? So that's why that element, I don't feel like it's worth me discussing so much anymore, because I'm not as salty about it, and I'm not as convinced it's a genuine reason to be upset anymore. Whereas I do still feel genuinely like this entire, everything from Reunited to now, because I thought from Reunited to now was just getting us to a midpoint in the battle against White. I totally would have been okay with Blue and Yellow turning now, that's fine, but White, I needed more time to understand White's ideology and White's thinking beyond, because the show has never been one to simplify things. The show has always explored and probed and got into the real nitty gritty, but essentially what they did was boiled White's whole ideology down to everything has to be perfect, and that is just not that interesting on its own. The show always finds an idea like that and then goes, yes, but why does that character think that way? What has led that character down this path? And that is how Steven, through observing that, learns to convince them otherwise. And that's always been the crux of a lot of the character drama in the show. Kind of upsetting to see it just get the simplified version and then not really get the more depth version. So unless they continue to explore White's, desire to be perfect and where that came from, But she went from a megalomaniacal dictator taking people over and literally robbing people of their free will to joking around on Earth with Greg and the gang. Like, I just don't understand how that is acceptable in an episode.
I'm not sure how much she was joking around, and I...
No, but but there was a point when she looked down, saw everyone being silly and smiled, and like it was like you could see her coming around to it, and I was just like, oh, this feels so cheap and unearned, like compared to everything else. So I have grown as I've thought about the episode over the 2 days that have passed since it aired. That has become my big criticism of it, which is just the way they've handled White, I think.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I agree, not as strongly or vehemently as you, but I do agree, definitely. I think some of the moments in the pool, the Nephrite one was enough for me. The Jasper one, I think it would be interesting to explore, but I get that it does feel true to the character to be like angry and then look round and be like, what the hell? And I like the small touches of Amethyst going over and speaking to him. I think what's funny for me is, in a way, and I shouldn't do this, but in a way, those small moments and attention to detail, I lump them in with other small moments and attention to detail that I love, some of which we like, some of which we didn't need, but they gave time to. The big one for me being Lars's moment with Lion. Like, they didn't need to do that at all. But it's the kind of thing that, as a fan, you go, oh, I'd quite like to see that play out, and we got to see it.
Yes, but at the expense of what? The exchange with Lion was about as lengthy as the exchange with Sadie. If you'd have told me that Lars reuniting with Lion would be given the same time as Lars reuniting with Sadie, I'd be like, really? Look, I get it. They're kindred spirits now. I understand that. They're both, whatever they are, they're both that. I get it. But, like, really? Above Sadie? Equal to Sadie?
Do you not think you could make the argument that Sadie and Lars have both grown so much, and what that exchange did show us is that even though they've grown and he's now a space cowboy and she's now a rock star, it suits them. There's clearly still some sort of chemistry for them, and I've got more hope for them going forward than I ever have. And in a way, a story on it is either going to explore that more, which awesome, I'm a Lars Sadie fanboy, I'd love to see, or it's got to undo it a little bit, which I don't want to see. So I didn't necessarily feel like we didn't particularly get enough from that, with the exception of maybe a little smooch to show that, because you could interpret there, I think it suits us both as we're not going to be romantically interested anymore because I've grown to be a rock star, you've grown to be a space cowboy, this can't work. Or you could interpret it as we're confident in ourselves and can now be together because it won't be blocked by our own insecurities about ourselves.
Which is exactly how I read it, and I think you kind of won me around there a little, because I will say that, like, with that description, I must admit it's probably the least egregious of the moments where I felt like we could have had more, and I felt a bit robbed. You're right. That one is
because at
least that one's given fucking dialogue, like Jasper, Nephrite, all that stuff. Just visuals under a song.
Surely the thing you definitely wanted that we didn't get for you is you spent a fair bit of the last podcast saying how much you wanted to see more of that fusion, who we just didn't see, and actually how Homeworld is going to change now is something that maybe you'd, or at least the presence of that character.
Yeah, that character really meant
surely a big bugbear.
Yeah, meant a lot to me, that character. I think that character represented a lot, and I think as well, if this had been a full season, I think we'd have seen a whole underground world on Homeworld of people who were not playing by White's stringent rules, and the more she forced everyone to be who she thought they should be, the more people resisted. And I like the idea that the off-colours just didn't know about the other groups, but there were other groups. And I think that if they did explore that, you would eventually fold that character into that world. And I think that's something we would have gotten to explore. And again, that's another thing we've kind of a little bit been robbed of now, is that, like, not robbed of quite, because I am certain we will get content now of Steven in the new homeworld, true Era 3. Era 3 didn't end, it didn't start, I don't think, with Pink returning. I think Era 3 started with Pink changing White's mind. I was quite sad we didn't get that gem, but with that gem, I will say, I don't know where in the structure of this story you fit that in. Like, if you sit me down and go, right, this is where we're starting, this is where we're ending, you've got 42 minutes, even I'd struggle to fit that gem in. So part of me would go, that I can serve that gem better, not using the gem at all, and bringing them in for a whole episode at a later date. It's called. We got its name. It's called. It's called. I think they confirmed what it's called. That gem. I think they said Lemon Jade. Let me double check that.
Okay.
Cool. There was an AMA on Reddit asked me anything, and they were asked about. They were asked about those gems, and apparently the cog gems weren't jades. That was a mistake on the subtitling part. Those cog gems are something else. The sort of greeny yellowy gems were jades, and there were two sort of separate kinds of jades that fused into, I want to say lemon jade, which it sounds silly in my head now I'm saying it out loud, but I'm sure that's the words I saw written down. Let me just check if that's a thing. Lemon jade is a real kind of jade with healing and metaphysical properties. Oh, some twats think it balances your mood. Sorry, I hate people that think crystals can affect your... Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyway, pseudo science nonsense that doesn't make any sense. Fine. So Lemon Jade as a character, but I think that's actually a good example, because I think that actually kind of proves my point, because by not cramming in a 20-second moment, that character is still out there for me to explore. Do you see the difference? Whereas giving Lars and Sadie a 10-second moment in this episode when they're reuniting could have been a whole episode, or giving Jasper a 10-second moment in this episode when Jasper could have had a whole episode later on. Like, the number of those bookends that are in this episode, I just think like a lot of them are kind of unnecessary, and you could have used that time better elsewhere. And like, I honestly would have pulled this story forward a few minutes. I would have given it more time to breathe, and I would have maybe ended it with White changing her mind.
Oh, and not done the montage.
Not done returning to Earth.
It is very much the montage that makes it, because if they'd have done that, we wouldn't be sat here now going, it felt like a season finale.
Exactly.
But because they literally wrapped it all up, it's hard. I know you want to talk about what's next at the end, but I just feel like this conversation naturally leads there. But I'll try and avoid that. But yeah, because it is essentially wrapping up, like you say, the main story, and giving, especially Lars returning, because it's like, that's, like you say, that's giving the audience a moment that they've been waiting for. Mm-hmm. I will say that the Change Your Mind song, and I'm torn on this as well, because
I love that song so much.
When I saw Change Your Mind in context, because I did listen to the 3 songs before.
Right, can we talk about this quickly, actually, Chris? I know you're building to a point, but can I just say, you are weak, and it is, I am ashamed. So I text Chris, I've got the texts here, I was going to bring this up. Like, I text Chris yesterday that said, the 3 songs from Boham, Spotify's released them early, and what happened was they were due to go up that day on Spotify across the world, but Australia get there first, don't they? They get there like the day before for a lot of us, by like a good 12 hours. So the songs were up 11 hours before the episode aired, because people got them from from Australia and Spotify and put them online. So I text Chris and said, avoid any SU related stuff. I've only seen the titles and wish I hadn't. And Chris responds, you can't tell me what to do, Doolan. Plus, I've already listened to them. I have no willpower. And I was just like, you are the worst. First of all, Chris, I have questions. How did you stumble across them? Because you're not, especially, during work, in the day, you're not exactly trolling through SU subreddits. I know this about you, because you'd be in the Discord more if you were. So how did that happen? Please explain.
Basically, Dan, last Wednesday, Thursday, I had a dream that Boham had aired. And in the dream, I woke up early and watched it. And then I woke up early and Boham hadn't aired. And I was disappointed. I was really, that, I don't know, when you dream that it's a Saturday and you wake up and you realise it's a Wednesday, that crushing disappointment, or where if something's worrying you and you dream and it's no longer a thing. Do you know what I mean? And then you wake up and you realise it's still a thing.
Having no excitement and no interest in this show to being somebody who is dreaming about the joy of an episode being out a day early.
Very aware of that. And can I just say, I think honestly...
Right, you know what? Forget that this isn't just the series finale for Steven Universe, it's by the side. This is the finale for this podcast, because surely we cannot beat that. You cannot win someone over any more than in the way Chris has just described.
No, absolutely not. And I nearly told everyone, but I was like, it'll be best to save this for the podcast.
Right.
So, and I tell you what, I found those 2 weeks more difficult, I think, than the hiatus, because it just sucked to have it with such momentum for 5 weeks running, and then just have nothing and not know. Know it was coming as well, because right now,
I'm still baffled why we had a week gap. If you're gonna put a week gap, put a week gap in that event, make it Christmas. No one wants to watch the episode on Christmas. Have that week off.
We'll get to the marketing of it, because that's the point. Sort of part of the point.
Yeah. So the songs. You were just googling stuff.
So basically, because the reason I think the 2 weeks was tougher is because I knew when it was as well. So it was like with Avengers Endgame, I'm a bit like, oh come on, let's get here already, because I kind of know when it is, and it's close but not close. With the movie, I'm like, we don't really know when that's going to be, so there's no point in me getting too excited. So I had been checking, occasionally just logging on and checking the Reddit, and just not that much, but just happened to have checked it then and seen the songs.
Gotcha.
And it was funny because I said to you, I think I called myself Hinter for Billingham, because I immediately asked whether you knew who had sung what. Because for me, and also, by the way, a bit of background, as those that listen to the podcast will know, I'm not particularly ever bothered. I have no real willpower, and I'm not bothered by spoilers either. I had the big twist at the end of season 3 of Lost spoiled for me, and reacted reading it exactly the same way I'd have reacted seeing it. So I'm not too... Do you know what I mean? I probably would have, for the purposes of this, resisted reading a whole synopsis or whatever. And I'm used to resisting spoilers for Steven Universe, because I had to do it for all those months. But I when I was debating whether to listen to the songs, I went, oh, I better not. And then in my head, I went, well, actually, now that we're up to date, this podcast is changed. And it is now... me and you, do you know what I mean? It's now us watching the show as it airs. So, fuck it. I'm going to apply what I would usually do. What I'd usually do is listen to the songs. So,
Gotcha.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I had a real moment of rebellion, of just Dan can't tell me not to listen to them. And at that point, it was funny because you hadn't even told me. But do you know what I mean? There was an element of, well, if we weren't doing this podcast, I would listen to the songs. So
the thing is, if
this podcast has to be honest, I'm now going to listen to the songs.
That's the thing is, it's funny though, because to compare the situations, now I would have absolutely listened to the songs if they'd leaked a week or two early, because I don't have that level of willpower for that long. But when these came out, I think when I found out they were out, I think it was 11 hours or 12 hours exactly before that it came out. The episode, but I didn't find out about the songs till about 10-ish hours just above that for the episode itself. So part of me just went, I've only got to wait 10 hours anyway. I think I can be patient for 10 hours to hear them in context.
Well, I knew
that was the factor. Whereas if it had been 2 days earlier, Chris, I don't think I'd have had the willpower, and I'd have probably listened to them. I'm usually in the leaks channel on our Discord.
Yeah. So I said to you, do you know who sung the songs? And you didn't, which I was pleased about. Because for me, it was funny. Who sung the songs was, in a way, a bigger spoiler than than the names of the songs.
Well, what's funny is
the
presumed spoiler I got from the titles wasn't even accurate. So when
that's what made me laugh so much, because I think I said to you, I think I said something to you like, don't find out who sings the songs. That's a bigger spoiler than the titles. And then I went, and not for the reasons you think, because I knew that in your head, the fact that We Are the Crystal Gems Change Your Mind version was there. Most people would assume that was some sort of big, and also me saying don't find out who's singing them. You in your head were probably picturing a big triumphant We Are the Crystal Gems with all the extended crystal gems.
That is definitely the first thing that went through my mind. Definitely.
But for me, the much bigger
Sadie,
spoiler
right?
was Sadie's presence, because it was like, well, Sadie is in this somehow then. Like,
yeah, which I've looked back now at, after seeing it, I looked back at some of the Reddit threads from when the songs leaked to see what people thought of the songs out of context, because I was just curious. I was like, God, if I'd have heard "Let Me Scar My Van Into Your Heart" prior to the episode, I don't know what I'd have imagined. But it turns out a lot of people thought what I thought, but included Sadie in it, because what I thought when I saw that title was that they were turning Greg's van into a spaceship, which poetry of
that was the popular theory, that we would cut to Earth and it would be them working. That song would be part of a scene which showed how Bismuth and Lapis and Peridot were going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't think of. I just thought Greg and Bismuth. I was not convinced we were seeing Lapis and Peridot in this episode. I wanted to desperately, but I wasn't sure we were getting that. So my honest thought when I saw that title was that it was going to be a big epic fight, and they were going to need a few seconds to get Steven to somewhere, or to push something, or to grab something, and he was going to get earned that time by Bismuth and Greg swooping out of nowhere in a spaceship converted van, while listening to an updated version of "Let Me Drive My Van Into Your Heart," and it would hit the very heart point on White's ship. That's what I envisioned when I saw that title. Just Greg and Bismuth in the van, driving it into the heart of White's ship to distract for a few moments, which would have been glorious. But I would have been very confused if I'd have heard that and heard Sadie's voice, because I would have either gone, Sadie's going with them for some reason. Well, you're building a spaceship? Lars is out in space. I'm coming. Like, I don't know how you explain that. What we got makes a lot more sense, trust me. But
it was mad. The stuff going through my head, because I was just like, why would you, if you're gonna see them, surely them arriving in a big bold moment, a la Lapis in Reunited, is the way to do it, and it was the way to do it. So if we cut back to Earth and them prepping, then it's just going to kill the momentum.
Well, you'd never cut back to Earth anyway, because the show it breaks the rules of the show, because it's always from Steven's perspective. If Steven can't be seeing it happen, you can't see it happen.
Exactly. So it was just like, so it's just like, how the hell does this happen?
Well, my assumption was that it was going to happen and be explained later. That my assumption was that it was going to be a big bold moment in the sense of they were going to be fighting White. We will have had no indication that that's what was happening from Earth. We wouldn't have seen them putting the van together. But suddenly in the sky you see a twinkle, like we did actually, but it ended up being the arm ships. And then what flew down wasn't the arms, but was Greg's van with wings and thrusters.
Can I say on the arms, like, you and I at least are fucking idiots, because as far as I'm aware, neither of us suggested that possibility, but actually how much logical fucking sense
I
think
we did say. Did we not say the arms? I'd definitely seen chat on the Discord about the arms. The arms made some a reasonable amount of sense to me.
The arms, yeah. If we had said the arms, I'd have been like, it's definitely the arms, because it gets the arms back. Then you can form the Megazord, like, all that stuff. The point I was building to before we got sidetracked by
the music. Yes, sorry. Yeah, carry on.
No, it's fine. Was I'm really torn on this as well, because I absolutely see that Battle of Heart and Mind is a better marketing title and a better big event title than Change Your Mind. But when I saw the context in which Change Your Mind is sung at the end,
yes,
I just thought, fuck you, because the whole show is about that. That song is about people with, like, you don't have to respect me, I respect myself. You don't have to love me, I love myself. But you could know me if you change your mind. That is about reaching through to people that have some sort of prejudice, whether that's against race, whether that's against sexuality, whether it's against colour, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That is about breaking through that, talking, getting to know someone, and how that can change your mind, and how people, and about how people in that position that want someone to feel that way aren't doing it because they want someone to love them or respect them or anything like that. They just want them to know them and understand a little better. And when I saw that context, I was like, well, it's so important that it should have been the title of the thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Battle of Heart and Mind was a title is a joke. It's a mess. It's Cartoon Network having no clue once again what they have on their hands. It's Cartoon Network. You know what it is? Cartoon Network is White Diamond, and the show is pink, and they don't understand. They just don't know what they've got. They don't get it. They don't. It's so clear that they do not understand this show and how important this show is to people, whether trans, whether gay, whether from a different race, as you pointed out, like anybody who's from any group that's ever been ostracized, which I understand I can't speak for as a fucking white penis carrier, but
you're straight as well.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah, white straight penis guy. I understand that I can't fully ever appreciate how much this show must mean to people who have been ostracized for being different in those ways. But I definitely understand being ostracized for being different, because I wasn't like a lot of the other kids at school. Not in any huge obvious ways that are, that lead to a lot of huge prejudice.
It always makes me laugh that you got a little. Which way round was it? Where were you first, Ireland or Manchester?
Oh yeah, okay. So I was in England first, and I had an English accent, brought up in English school, got moved to Ireland, and got bullied for being the English kid in an Irish school, and then I adopted an Irish accent to protect myself. Then I got moved back to England, where I was then bullied, absolutely relentlessly for being the Irish kid, because in England we tell Irish man jokes, and in Ireland they tell English man jokes, where the other is stupid, that is So I've we've all experienced a form of it. And even if it's not at the same level, as somebody who's obviously got, a situation where there's a huge amount of prejudice built into millions of people for them, and I feel for anybody who's in that situation. I can't imagine how it must feel to wake up every day knowing that such a huge percentage of the world thinks you're abhorrent in some way. It's upsetting to even say it. Actually, it's horrible to think that that's the case. So a show like this. Fuck me, this must mean so much to so many people. I mean, if it means that much to me, and that my all I'm thinking about is, I got bullied for an accent at school. God, I can't even imagine how much it must mean to the trans community, to the gay community, to anybody that's moved to a country they're not originally from, where they're considered a minority and they're therefore treated, unfairly. Cartoon Network have no idea. They don't understand this show. They don't know what this show means to people. And Battle of Heart and Mind as a title, as you pointed out, Chris, correctly, is absolute proof of their ignorance. Absolute proof that to them it's just a silly kids show, and you can't give it a title that change your mind. No, we got to sell it on action. We've got to sell it on, whatever. No, that's not what this show is about. That's never what this show has been about. And the people who watch this show and care about this show don't give a shit about that. They would have been just as excited by Change Your Mind as Battle of Heart and Mind. I promise you. Cartoon Network, you're stupid.
I tell you what. No, it's fine. And I tell you what, I actually, and I kind of am going into a little bit of, well, no, I'm not going into what I think might be next. I'm going into what frustrates me further is Cartoon Network, by doing that kind of thing, have actually, in my opinion, created a format for this show that they're never going to do, that actually, now that we've had this episode, moving forward, I wouldn't mind. If Rebecca Sugar turned around and said, right, we've told our main story, but we've still got stories to tell. So from now on, we're not going to do seasons. It will just be occasional movies and events, and it will be like pocket stories, because all my thoughts about, well, where could this go, because they've wrapped it up so much, don't lend themselves. I'm like, well, okay, is there like some sort of civil war where some of the gems rebel against what's happening? Well, no, because it's the Diamond Authority and they're on board. So does one of the diamonds change their minds again? That's a bit shitty and kind of would make sense because they change their mind really quickly, but contradicts that. So like outside forces or town-centric stuff, whatever it may be, for me personally, events going forward kind of makes sense, but they won't even do that. Do you know what I mean? That won't happen.
Yeah, if it was like if the show sort of got rebranded as like, Tales from Homeworld or something like that, or Tales from Steven Universe, and it was just like free to finally drop Steven's perspective and just tell stories from wherever and whoever, and put a new character at the center of the stories each week. I would adore that. Yeah. What a great way to epilogue the show.
Exploring the gems, visit the gems, because that's the thing. If the gems are really definitely on board with Steven now, then they presumably need to rethink their entire ethos, which means there will be planets that they have harvested gems in that they either need to give back or halt gem production on certain colonies, whatever it may be. And imagine a planet that's already been destroyed and taken over, and the diamonds turning up and being like, sorry, that's not gonna fly. But that's not, I don't know that's particularly an arc for 5 seasons or even a season. It's an interesting arc for an event or for a movie or for something like that. So but I don't think that is what will happen.
No, I agree. I 100% agree. I think, yeah, they've created it. That's the problem. It's their lack of consistency and the fact they keep changing the format. It's like, I don't understand how anyone can create good content under these circumstances. Because if Cartoon Network keep moving the goalposts, and saying it's a series where there's 1 episode a week and you get this many a year, we're halving the number you get per season. Now we're gonna change the line of where a season is for you. Okay, so it's 26 episodes now instead of 52. Oh, sorry, 22 episodes now instead of... Oh, no, what was it? It was 54 the first year. Was it 56? I can't remember what they did. They just split it. Oh, it's okay. It's half that now. Okay. Screw that. We're not going to air it regularly. You're going to get these bombs now, or we're just going to drop a handful of episodes across a week. Okay, yeah, all right. We'll adjust for that. That's fine. We can tell. The first one will be a bit wobbly because we've not prepared for that. But subsequent ones we can have a through line. We can give it a story. That's okay. We can work under that. We can work with that. Yeah. We're going to change it now. We're going to do Summer of Steven. We're going to air a shit ton of your episodes across a whole summer. We're going to drop like a season and a half. Is that cool? Yeah, that kind of fucks with our pacing, but we can figure that out. Yeah, do you remember those bombs we were doing? Yeah, well, we're going to do 1 more of them. Yeah, and then we're going to do a handful of smattering of single episodes, right? And then we're going to do a big night where we do like 5. Okay, yeah, right. We'll go with that, I guess. Like I can just picture all the people who were like this, all the crew members just banging their heads against paper and pens, just like I want it to stop. Stop changing it, Cartoon Network.
Here's a question for you though: Do you think it was Cartoon Network, or do you think Rebecca Sugar and the team delivered Wanted? And there's an element of, well, you've got 4 episodes here that go together. We might as well put them together.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, with Wanted and this, I think this was probably more the crew leading the network rather than the other way around. But a lot of the other ones were clearly the network leading the crew. It wouldn't surprise me now, having seen this, if maybe the idea for Wanted was to go this way, and Cartoon Network's fear of syndication made it be split into 4. Maybe I've had this wrong the whole way around. Maybe I've had this wrong the whole time. Maybe it's not always been the plan for the crew to keep it as single episodes. Maybe that's always been Cartoon Network's mandate, and this is them finally gloriously breaking that boundary. Maybe I've been looking at it from the wrong angle the whole time. I don't know. For those 2, I'm less sure that Cartoon Network was fucking them around. But for the rest of them, Cartoon Network was definitely fucking them around.
Oh, yeah.
It's so obvious in the storytelling.
It was interesting with this, because it was absolutely a complete 42-minute episode. But equally, every 10 minutes there was an exciting incident where you could have split it. Now,
Yes.
you could argue that that's because the advert breaks.
But the advert breaks were all at 11 minutes from the last one. It was all placed very perfectly for you to do that. So upon syndication, that is probably how it will air.
Yeah, absolutely. But it did feel like, arguably, although arguably the Bismuth one felt more like one episode. That was much harder to split up, if memory serves, than this one, in a way. But we discussed before viewing it, and it's like we didn't want to hinder this discussion by trying to keep to part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. But let's kind of go to part 1 now. So were your kind of thoughts of obviously Blue changes her mind quite quickly. So were you immediately in a position of or were you just along for the ride at first and thought all that kind of stuff after?
Well, I mean, we talked about that being the most logical and simplest one to do. I said that last week, and and this is the benefit of Chris of spreading it a bit thinner and not planting my flag so hard in certain theories. Because as much as I lent into yellow, I very clearly did say, but blue makes sense as well. Blue's the one everyone thinks because it is the most logical. So there's a chance they're just going to go with the most logical. Saves the least explanation, saves the most time because you'll question Blue's changing heart the most. But either way, it seemed very clear to me, and we very much laid in fact, this episode we pretty much laid out last week, bit by bit. We put this episode together very accurately, actually. I'm pleasantly surprised because we've had so many failures in the last few weeks that we kind of got this one nailed. I very specifically said Blue would come to see Stephen immediately, and that room was where she throws the ball at Stephen was very much the chamber. I said once they're let out of there so there was two ways it was going to go. I said either Blue visits, leaves, and then the pebbles help Stephen out, and then Stephen runs into yellow and changes her mind, and that's when she bumps into Blue, and the fight happens as they try to get to the legs. Or the other possibility I laid out was Blue changes her mind and is the one that lets Stephen out, and then yellow catches them, and they fight leading up to the legs. But that is pretty much the structure of that episode, one way or the other. I should have realised there was one step less in the Blue version, which makes it actually more likely. Because we knew Blue went to see Stephen, to have yellow change mind means you have to talk to Blue, then talk to yellow, then have Blue come back into the story. Yeah. So I should have actually put that together at the time. Hindsight 2020. But we called an awful lot of these first few minutes. I even actually remember thinking, and someone just pointed out to me the day that I did say this. I wasn't sure if I'd actually vocalized this thought on the previous podcast, but I remember saying at some point, I'm pretty sure most of this trailer is the first 10 minutes. And I wasn't too far off with that, was I?
No, not at all. There was something like Stephen sliding down and stuff, and a lot of the overlaid dialogue was from later. Yes. I love that we also discussed the complication of Amethyst unpoofing herself really quickly, and that was addressed in there.
I had a little cheer for you, Chris, because you talked about that, and when you talked about it, I was like, no, that's been because you brought it up like 2, maybe 3 times, like across.
Yeah.
From the episode Amethyst was poofed to our discussion of the trailer for Boham.
Yeah.
Sorry, change your mind. Boham is dead, everyone. Change your mind. I think I have to respect the big rant I just did earlier for calling Cartoon Network idiots. And as much fun as it is to say Boham, because it's very fun to say.
It is fun to say Boham.
I'm going to drop it now in favour of change your mind, because I absolutely agree with what Chris said earlier. I think, between those two things, you brought it up 2 or 3 times, to the point where I started to go, that piece of canonical information about Amethyst really is permeated with Chris. That just makes a lot of sense to Chris. That's like hard fact, Chris. That's not interchangeable at all. That's got to be explained or covered in some way. Whereas to me, poofing and unpoofing has always been a bit vague. They've always been a bit like, they come out when they're ready. So I wouldn't have been too... That wouldn't have... I wouldn't... If you hadn't brought it up, wouldn't have really occurred to me that much. Do you know what I mean? But I was so happy that they remembered the rules as much as you did. and had
Yeah,
Stephen
yeah.
very directly address it. And I gave a little cheer, not just for like that made sense, but for you, because I was like, well, for all the Chris's of the world, who that fact really like resonated with in a way that just made a lot of sense to them, they're going to be absolutely thrilled that it's been sort of covered in the context of the canon of the show.
Yeah, and I was. I then kind of when the explanation was like, yeah, like it made sense, but I did wonder whether it was the plan all along, or whether they were like, oh, how are we going to address this? Oh, I know, because she's a diamond, like it takes longer. But they made it fit the rules, because the diamond yellow hitting them and poofing them. I love that they don't come out of those poofs when they're ready. They come out of those poofs as a result of Steven fusing with them, and he drags them out and stuff.
Yeah, we'll get to those in a bit. There's a lot of cool stuff there that I want to talk about. But I agree with you. I think the poofing of the gems. Also, they were bubbled, and you can't unpoof while you're bubbled. We know this because all the gems in the temple were all bubbled, and they're not on poofing. Although they almost always, I guess what happens is if you're ready while you're still in the bubble, it holds you, and then you're immediately unpoofed when you come out of the bubble, because historically when we've seen the bubbles popped, the gem has then immediately reformed. So that tells me that, like, let's say your time frame is a week. If someone pops the bubble 3 days in, you still aren't reforming because you're not ready. But if you pop the bubble 2 weeks in, you immediately reform because you were ready a week ago. Does that make sense? That's my head canon for how that works. So even if Amethyst had wanted to unform immediately, she was bubbled. Actually, was she stored in a bubble, or did Steven put them in a bubble? I can't remember now.
No, they were stored in a bubble.
They were stored. Oh yeah, it was floating above. Yellow. It was floating above yellow. You're right, absolutely. Yeah. By the way, let's talk about that scene for a minute. So blue. So
well, before we get there, because before that happens, Bismuth, Peridot, and Lapis arrive.
No.
So
not before the scene I'm talking about.
So they're not, oh no, you're right. He gets them first, and then they fight. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Bismuth and Peridot and Lapis don't arrive till later in the episode. But we've not even talked about the dream yet. God, there's so much going on in this fucking episode. Jesus Christ. Right. Let's actually break this down properly. Let's not rob anybody of like full discussion. First of all, how did you feel about them having Blue come in? And you think it's, well, I didn't. I clocked it was a dream straight away due to the lack of Connie. But did you like the idea of a dream version of Blue coming in and telling off Pink that probably resembles history before then going to the real thing?
I thought it was a good little twist, and I'll be completely honest with you, mate. Just for Deja Blue alone, worth it. Because that was brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. Deja Blue did make me laugh a lot. There are so many great jokes in this 42 minutes of television, but we'll get to my my favorite one right at the end, because my absolute favorite is such a predictable joke, but it's so good. We'll get to that. Yeah, so you like did the dream? The one thing I did question was, did the dream add anything other than just reminding us that Steven's situation and Pink's original situation are so similar? Or is that just enough to justify its existence?
I think that's enough, and also it means that when you have the montage of Steven connecting with and remembering Pink, you've got a more recent example to pull from. And so it helps. It adds weight to the notion that maybe Pink is coming back later on.
Yeah, and it I must admit as well, it does add to. Actually, it doesn't just add to the plot. I mentioned it does also add to just the identity crisis element for Steven. You know, because he looks at his hands and they're changing, and then you see that really brilliant but kind of mortifying shot of him cycling through the faces.
Yeah, which I enjoyed that. That was quite powerful. I think it's always sounds really stupid, but especially in a show like I remember the first time. I mean, this is a bad example because they then undid it. But I remember the first time you saw all 10 at the time faces of the previous Doctor in Doctor Who. He in the next Doctor episode, he uses a cyber controller to go through the faces, and I remember being like, "Oh, cool, right? It's canon now. They can't sneak another one in," which of course they later did. But anyway, and it was kind of nice to be like, oh, okay, it's Pink, Rose, Steven. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not gonna insert something else there. It's just kind of cool to see it as a visual, basically.
Yeah, and I think that actually bookends the episode nicely, thinking about it, because in an episode that's almost purely about Steven's identity and Steven learning and to accept himself, and not just accept himself, but like respect himself and love himself, and that I think it's nice to establish at the beginning that there must still be some lingering doubts in him about who he is and what he means and what he represents, and I think most people feel that way about their place in the world. Let alone this poor child that's got the weight of a fucking planet on his shoulders, but that's a different issue.
Yeah.
So then he convinces Blue. I've forgotten the exact dialogue. Do you recall the exact dialogue that you used? I can't remember.
She talks about how if she says something really nice about if Earth became home, how miserable must you have been here, or something.
That was it. Yeah, that's exact
nice stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do, don't they? Because I love that Connie mentioned, by the way, when he starts crying, don't cry, you're already dehydrated. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Yeah, that was also hilarious. That was a great joke as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Yeah, you're right, that's it. So it's, what does Steven say? I'm just trying to find Steven's dialogue here. I can't find... Oh, yeah, there you go. Maybe Pink thought you guys were right to lock her in here when she messed stuff up, but I know what it's like to have a loving family. We don't do stuff like this to each other. The crystal gems understand that I'm Steven and they support me, and Connie, and then they hold hands. And you poofed them for sticking up for me. That isn't normal. And that's when she says that's enough and hits him with the ball. I think that's really good. Oh, there you go. How many times did you lock her in here? How many times did you make her cry? That's the line. That's the change moment. When she thinks about the abuse and actually realizes it. So because you said earlier you weren't as sure still that if they'd done enough for Blue and Yellow. Do you not think that's quite a powerful idea? Or do you just think it's not established enough? Or?
I think all powerful ideas, it just, like I say, it just happens quite quickly, and it's just about, it's a powerful idea when you kind of talk it through, but if you're just watching, does it come across?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Then they go get food, because Blue lets them out. Well, they go back to Pink's room and they get food, which I think is a nice moment because they've clearly been in there for a little while.
Only food, by the way. I mean, you'd think they'd be thirsty as well. As Connie said, they're dehydrated.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. There was nothing in that shot to indicate drink, was there? But let's just assume they got to drink somewhere else, because otherwise that is... Is there water on Homeworld? Who knows? Probably all... I imagine a lot of the resources on that... Oh, yeah, there must be, because we've seen... There's pools and showers and baths and stuff, isn't there? And the saunas. So there's got to be water on Homeworld of a form. They bump into the pebbles, which is nice. A little goodbye to the pebbles.
I like that. Oh, we haven't talked about that element of the dream/memory. So, what was Rose hiding? The worm type creature then?
Yeah, I got the impression that the same way that like Pink's clearly created the pebbles, I get the impression she was always just toying about with like weird stuff that doesn't serve a purpose, and that bothered them because they create gems and life for a purpose, right? We got that from the What's the Use in Feeling Blue song, an agate terrifies, a lapis terraforms, like they all have purpose. So I guess Pink was just making friends, like actually,
It just seems to me, rather than introduce something completely new, you could have done that with the pebbles, couldn't you? You could have had her playing with the pebbles.
Yes, but I think the problem with that would have been less clear immediately that was a dream.
But again, I don't think they particularly wanted the audience to know it was a dream.
I think that's the moment you start to go, oh wait, she's talking about something different. She's not talking about them fusing in the thing. She's talking about some creatures that Pink has let loose. That's got to be, and then you're going, yeah, this is different. That's when you start, I would imagine, start thinking it that in that direction, I guess. And it's such a cute little multicolored little caterpillar thing. Why would you want to erase that from the world, Chris? In the place of pebbles. Yeah. It's adorable. I just like the idea that she played around with lots of different kinds of creatures. It would have been nice to tie it to the pebbles, I suppose, but I just like the idea she toyed around with lots of life. Like, made lots of different kinds of friends. I think that's a nice notion, even if... And I like that as well, she, like, safely let it get away before Blue did something to it.
Yeah.
That was adorable. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed that.
Then they go to Yellow. So Yellow, I liked Yellow's confirmation with Blue.
Well, I just love the way that you don't know Yellow's in the room at first, and then they turn the lights on, and as if Yellow knew it was going to happen. That's what I love most. What I got most out of that scene was the fact Yellow seemed to be just waiting in the dark, knowing full well Blue was going to be weak for Pink. That was great. What a great character moment that was. How well must Yellow know Blue to have been stood there, to have been sat there in the dark waiting with the poof gems above, just waiting as bait. Oh, come on, that's great. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
But how did you feel about the way they talked Yellow around? Well, they didn't straight away, did they? They fought for a bit. So I suppose.
Yeah, I liked the fight. I was glad that Yellow kind of brought up, well, when Pink was gone, I was your comfort, everything I did for you. I thought they made that very, very real. I mean, she again changed her mind fairly quickly, but as we discussed already, it does feel like it makes more sense for Blue and Yellow.
Yeah, did you like... one moment I really loved was Blue saying she prefers to be called Steven.
Yeah, that was very powerful.
I thought that there's something about that, because they've spent the whole time laughing at that and going, oh, shush, Pink. Like, that moment was like the first sign of like, oh no, Blue's really on Steven's side now. Now Blue kind of gets it. Like, for the first time, Blue gets it.
And Blue really gets it, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool.
I feel a bit like they tried in White's dialogue at the end, where she points to everyone and says about their insecurities and stuff. I feel like that was also them trying to address this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they've tried to make that work across this episode, previous episodes, and all scenes in this episode. But I didn't. It didn't jar with me as much as White, and it didn't. As we've already discussed, it felt a bit rushed to me, but it didn't necessarily hinder anything. But I think that's just because it goes at such a pace, and it's only after when you think about these things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Did you like that Blue tried and failed to convince Yellow with the argument that had won her round? I liked that. So Yellow said...
that was very good.
So Yellow said, like, you'd hurt a fellow diamond, and she's like, didn't we hurt Pink? She suffered in silence for ages, just like our gems, just like me, and I know you're suffering in silence too. She used the exact same argument Steven had just won her round with. It didn't work. That's when they start fighting, I'm pretty sure. So, but I love that that's the route she went. I think that's a really great, approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the way Steven convinced Yellow was the pork chop was perfect metaphor.
Which I did like. I did like that we went back to that. That made me chuckle quite a lot. And I liked the way she was just like, well, what on earth does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
it's fine. It's different. I'm not trying to. It's trying to remember the scene exactly, and then trying to pull more thoughts than we've already given on them changing their Blue and Yellow changing their minds.
Well, I just thought it'd be interesting because we didn't when we talked about it. We talked generally about how fast it was done, and we didn't talk about the exact arguments used. So I thought it'd be fun to examine.
I think the nice thing is both the arguments used to eventually win round them absolutely appeal to their characters. Even the argument that brought White round of you think you're perfect, you're clearly not. If you can accept you're not perfect, then you'll be able to accept that no one else is either. It all fits.
If you accept your flaws, you can accept ours. I think that's really powerful. And I think as well, though, just having looked at the dialogue, just pulled it up, when they're talking to Yellow, and he tries to explain the hot dog analogy. In a weird way, Blue is actually the one that makes it make sense, because Steven says it means if you try to make this empire perfect, if you just wipe away everything you see as flawed, you lose other things that make you happy, like hot dogs. I love, and it's Blue that then has to add or pink.
Yeah.
Because Steven was still thinking about hot dogs. I hadn't really thought about it from that angle, but I quite enjoy that Blue's the one that has to add or pink. You know, the thing we're actually discussing here, Steven. Get your mind off hot dogs.
That was a nice moment. And the fight itself, you know, them chucking each other through the walls and stuff was pretty epic.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, visually, this episode is stunning all around. That fight is awesome. We did see a lot of that in the trailer, but I'm okay with that because that's what Marvel need to learn to do. Pick a fight, show us a ton of that so we get the spectacle in the trailers, but don't show us a slither from every fight. Because if we could imagine if we'd have seen a slither from every fight in this episode, if we'd have seen a slither of Obsidian fighting the big ship, or we'd have seen a sliver of Steven facing off with White, like, no good.
Yeah, but I mean, by first trailers of Far From Home and Endgame indicate that maybe they've learned that.
Maybe
lesson.
they have learned that lesson, but historically, the first trailers are usually fine. It's usually the second trailer that fucks it.
Yeah,
so,
you're right. Yeah.
So I'm holding reserve. I'm not holding my breath for Marvel to get that lesson.
Infinity War, especially, you could piece the whole movie together.
You could,
with the exception of the last 2 minutes.
You could absolutely. One thing I liked as well was that when Yellow started crying, her first assumption was that it was Blue's fault.
Yeah.
Stop using your powers. That was.
I'm not. Yeah, that was the lovely moment.
I mean, there are so many. I mean, we could literally go. I mean, we probably will. Go through the almost every minute or so had some awesome moment that I really enjoyed. Like in it. I had to pause this episode halfway through. Actually, that's a question. What circumstances did you watch this under? Because I watched this at the end of a long shift at work, a long day at work. Very late. I was home, really late. And I switched it on, and halfway through I had to just pause. I had to just stop. Once they got to Obsidian, I was done. I was like, nope, I need a minute. And I paused it, and I made a cup of tea, and I went to the toilet. Like, I went on the Discord for a few minutes, had a chat with everyone just about, I've seen half,
so
it's
you had
crazy.
You had a cup of tea at like 3 a.m. or whatever it was.
Yeah, mate, I needed it. I needed something. It's a lot going on in this episode. It was really, and I knew as well when I finished the episode there was no way I was going to bed anytime soon. I was up until like 5 because I was just then talking about it on the Discord and stuff. Like this absolutely like took over my day and my evening. 5 a.m. that is.
I got up early and watched it in the morning, so I watched it all the following morning.
So you watched it about 6:30 or something?
It. Yeah, no, a bit later than that. I got to work early and watched it at my desk, and it timed, and in order to do deliberately tried to be a bit quicker in the morning so I could get in early enough, and then got in and kind of had just like it finished and then work began kind of thing.
Right. Oh man, so you didn't even have time to decompress.
No, well, I mean, hopefully, I did, but just like I didn't get much done for the first whatever. Like, just thinking about it, like,
yeah, there's a lot to take in, isn't there? That's why I didn't get sleep. So you didn't get to work. I didn't get to sleep. Like this is
someone's uploaded it in 18 parts to YouTube, or at least they had. So like I could re-pick out certain moments and rewatch and stuff.
I love that someone's done that. That's very, yeah, okay. That's.
What was your like immediate rewatch moment? What moment did you immediately go back to and rewatch?
I went back and watched the last montage because that's the bit that had bothered me the most, and I wanted it to not bother me desperately. So I went back and rewatched that. But then after I'd done that and gotten that out of my system, because I went back to it was just like, okay, let's rethink about all these stories I feel like they've thrown away. Let me reanalyze them from a new angle and just see if they're not dead, but just given a little end point in case, and that they can still continue. And like I said, 4 out of 5 of them, that was the case. So I felt less bad about that when I sat down. But then after that, the rewatch moment was Pink's gone. She's gone. Steven yelling. Pink Steven yelling. Pink's gone. And the ground shattering under him. Like, holy shit, that moment is awesome. Like, well, fuck me.
I rewatched her taking the gem from Steven.
That as well. That bit is more... That whole section from that point to Pink's gone is incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to it, but dear Lord.
And we'll get to it. And actually, this isn't just a tool to push us forward, but genuinely the kind of the next big moment, which is obviously they run with Yellow now in tow, and they run and they kind of get caught by White Pearl and her ship, and then they're interrupted by the return of Bismuth and Peridot and Lapis. And the reason I kind of went to that is it was such a thrill to see them, but I also wanted to really... I don't know if anyone else did this, but I just wanted to pause and look really hard. And I think if you look hard enough, you can kind of see a star on Lapis.
There is. It's a bisected star, which I actually think, considering her sort of wanting to be herself and not wanting to be part of another group, following her last commitment to any cause, getting her trapped in a mirror for thousands of years, like, I kind of get it. She doesn't want to fully commit to any cause now, but I think it's actually kind of amazing she put any kind of a star on her outfit. Whereas Peridot is now made of stars. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The contrast between those two, with Lapis's subtle star, and Peridot's got stars on her knees. She's got stars on her chest. I'm surprised her face isn't the shape of a star now.
But as well as being half the star, though, with the kind of rope or whatever's hanging from her trousers, that kind of to me forms the end. The other where that's kind of like where the other end point of the star would be.
Correct.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a little bit... It is half a star on the T-shirt, or whatever she's wearing, but equally I think the other half is sort of kind of there with that as well, which I just thought was a really great choice.
I want to pull up the design again in front of me, because they're so cool, aren't they? You know what? That moment was a big moment for me, not because of the redesign. We all kind of knew a redesign was coming. As glorious as that was to be confirmed, just their presence made me so happy. Because, and I said this when we talked about it earlier, I was convinced, and I have never been so glad to be wrong, that they were not making an appearance in this episode until the very end. I really didn't think they could factor into this story. I'm glad they worked it out. I'm glad they made it happen. Like, thoroughly happy they made it happen. But there was a portion of time when I was absolutely convinced that wasn't gonna, and like
we've missed something else, because we've missed another element of the Yellow discussion, because the thing that I'd have been convinced that they weren't going to be able to fit in was Connie telling a story about her mum.
That's odd. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. That is weird.
Bizarre moment, wouldn't it? And that happens when she talks to Yellow, doesn't it? That's one of the factors that gets Yellow to change her mind, if memory serves. She's like, when my mum used to ground me.
Let me find the quote.
How bizarre is that?
Yeah, you're right. Where is that? That is here somewhere. Let me find that, because that is an interesting quote.
Search the word mum, because I think she says mum. So search MOM and you should find it.
I keep finding moment. The word moment.
Right.
No, I can't find. Let me just 1 second. Let me find Connie's dialogue. Connie
in general is in this way more than I was expecting.
Yeah, and I'm so glad about that. I mean, they made a joke of her
beautifully.
They made a joke of her not necessarily being able to fight. Like, there's a great moment when she gets her sword and she's like, "I'm right there with you," and she's like, looks at Obsidian with Obsidian's giant sword and is like, "Cool." Like, I guess.
But they did that.
I'll just chill down here.
The beautiful, wonderful choice of making Peridot ride a bin lid that has a handle, like, just genius touches like that, man.
Oh. Like, Bismuth flying around on that piece of metal the whole time. Beautiful. so good. Like, so good. But
Peridot flying around on it.
Sorry, did I say bismuth? Sorry. But Peridot flying around on that piece of metal was genius. She's so getting strong with her powers. And I love that. I can't find this Connie quote, but you're right. It's definitely there. I remember it. Like it happened.
I remember. I remember it being. I remember reading. I don't know if it was the AV clubs, but one review I read of the episode was just like they even found time for Connie to chat about her mum. It was like, oh yeah, weird.
Was it with? Maybe it was with blue, not yellow.
Maybe then, yeah.
Oh yeah, because they were saying she was grounded. That was it.
Blue was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, found it. Connie chuckles. Think I've never been grounded before? And then... Oh, it doesn't go straight into the mum stuff. God, it is in here somewhere. Okay, we'll move on, but yeah, that was a really weird moment. I'll see if I find it later. I'll chip in.
So were you cheering like the fanboy that you are when Bismuth, Peridot, and Lapis appeared, and like you say, Peridot was just covered in stars?
Yeah, I mean they did it beautifully. They did it beautifully because they what they did, which I thought was kind of like was the best part of it, was that because it's two ships, you have that moment of Bismuth is there, and you don't really for a second question who's flying the second ship, and you're like, yay, Bismuth, back up, awesome. And because, again, I was utterly convinced they weren't going to find room for Lapis and Peridot in this episode, then switching to the other ship and showing a bubble coming up to show people coming out of that one, I'm going, who the fuck's this? Like, and then it...
Oh, no, I was absolutely... I was immediately like, once Bismuth appeared... Well, actually, once they were like, who's that? I was like, Bismuth, and the other one's got to be Lapis and Peridot. I was absolutely...
The moment I realised it was Lapis and Peridot was the moment they cut to the other hand and started showing, because it's a weird effect, that, showing people beam out of the ship onto the hand. It's like a bubble arises and then pops, and they're just there. I love it. It's very Steven Universe, but I don't really understand the physics of that or what happens. Like, do they stand on like a pad inside the hand and then it beams them up that way? I don't really know. But either way, the second they cut to the other hand, my brain did like a calculation over like 2 seconds of, oh, that must be who it is, because I can't think of anyone else it could be unless it's Greg. Unless just Greg comes out of the other hand, and I just didn't see Greg taking part in this battle.
Just in case I forget now, I mean, a bit weird, isn't it, for Greg to just... I'd have sat the concert out if I knew my son was definitely in danger, because the last time I'd seen him was dying as a watermelon, and everyone I knew that, could save him was clearly in trouble, and then the remainder of all the people I knew that could had to go off. I'd probably, whether I was managing the band or not, I probably wouldn't be like, Sadie's doing a cover of my song. Oh yeah, fuck it, let's off to the beach line. Come on.
You know what? I've been thinking about that, and I keep coming back to the Garnet moment.
Which moment?
The moment he had with Garnet, when Garnet asks him to water Cat Stevens, and he says something like, are we going to be okay? And she says, Stephen will be fine. It was very much a future vision moment, and I keep coming back to that and going, I think Greg knew that was a future vision moment, and that she was not just going based on, she wasn't just saying that based on
because he doesn't say,
she wasn't being reassuring.
He doesn't say you're alive or you're not in danger. He says you're home.
Exactly. So I think that he correctly, because obviously we know that Garnet doesn't see the future. She just sees all the possibilities and therefore can sort of assume the most likely path. I am going to work under the assumption that she saw many, many paths, and Stephen came out of most of them fine. Most, if not all of them, fine. So she was not saying that to Greg out of being consoling. She wasn't trying to reassure him. She was being honest with him. And I get the impression Greg knew that. That's my headcanon for it. You're right, though. The show doesn't address that. And I think anybody that walks away with the impression of, that was weird, he went to a concert while his son was in danger. Why didn't he go with them? Even though he's not going to be able to help in space on Homeworld or whatever, if my kid was in danger, I'd have definitely gone after them. Do you know what I mean? Like Stephen went after me when I got stuck in space. Like there is an element of that, and if you think that, I totally would understand why you would have gotten that conclusion. The show didn't justify it properly. In my head canon, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
So obviously then the arms attach and a battle ensues between yellow and blue and white. And is that then when white and yellow and blue are taken?
No,
it is, isn't it?
that. Let me check.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Because then that's when he drops the gems and goes down after them into the.
Before we get to that, actually, can I quickly say with the Megazord, I know what they were going for with the eyes. Like I get it. Didn't work. They were trying to make it creepy, but the problem was it kind of had like a CGI face that they'd created with like vector art. Like it was like it had a 3-dimensional gloss to it, like it had been created in a computer with polygons. But the eyes were hand drawn. And instead of looking creepy, which is what they were after, it just looked weird. Like, not in a creepy way weird. Just like, every time I saw the eyes, I was just like, no. And again, if they'd have hand-drawn the whole thing, I think the effect would have been quite creepy. But because it was this weird Uncanny Valley CGI with animation on top of it, it just looked not good. Like,
bizarre, a little bit bizarre.
The only time it worked was later in the episode when they were climbing through the iris. I thought that was really cool. Like the idea that when the eyes open, it creates these tunnels inside the head. That's a cool concept. Like visually, that's great. Like in terms of like not visually, design-wise, that's really cool. I'm on board with that big time. I think the actual execution of the Megazord eyes opening just looked weird, not creepy, and they were going for creepy. You can tell by the music and the way it was done. And look, I know I'm definitely not the representing everyone's opinion on that here, because there were definitely some people in our Discord that were saying very thoroughly they found that creepy. I found it
a little creepy, I must admit.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, for me, I was just like, yeah, that element of it didn't work for me at all. In terms of the sequence of events, it looks, from what I can see here, that there's a small fight that it ensues. They knock down the Megazord, and then it gets back up. Oh, I've just found a shot where the eyes actually look alright. Like 8 shots where the eyes look terrible, and then the one where it's like creeping up over the horizon at them. That looks
yeah.
That shot's pretty cool. So yeah, you're right. That's when it fully forms. Yeah, you've got the sequence almost exactly right. So there's a bit of a battle where they knock it down, and then there's a moment where they get on the hands and they get lifted up, and they're talking to it.
That's it.
And they're trying to yellow and blue are trying to get through to white, and you think it might be working, and then the eyes glow. And they both get turned into creepy white puppets, which was fucking creepy.
Every time that was done, it was done effectively, I thought.
That was horrifying. You know what, though? I will say I have a small criticism of that choice, though. Because the second they did that, I was like, now I'm more confident it can be undone. Because part of the horror for me was always... For Pink Pearl, was that was permanent damage and it would never be undone.
Yeah, and I mean another story they didn't really fully flesh out, by the way, Pink Pearl.
We'll get to Pink Pearl. Pink Pearl's part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and but here's a question for you on it though, jumping slightly. Did she not do it to Connie because she couldn't do it to Connie? Because Connie's not a gem?
I assume so. Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Because if you look at where the beam hits, it hit them in the gem first.
Oh, yeah.
On all of them, it hit them in the gem. It hit Garnet's hands. It hit Pearl's forehead. So yeah, I think that is very specifically a gem only thing. I think that's why she couldn't do it to Steven. Because
it did. Huh?
I think she could have tried to do it. I don't think she could have done it to Steven for the same reason. I think the organic side of Steven wouldn't adjust that way.
Right, fair enough. And obviously she couldn't do it to Pink Diamond Steven because he's just so powerful. It's like the Terminator.
I love that so much.
We'll
get to that.
Yeah, it's awesome. We'll get to that.
I love that our quote for this episode. We might, if we named these episodes, we'd call this one. We'll get to that because there's so much in this episode. We're trying to make sure we don't miss anything by going through it chronologically, and I hope people aren't finding that annoying. It's just I couldn't think of a better way to actually make sure we didn't miss any of the cool stuff that happens in this episode and gives everything that's awesome some time. It's not the most convenient format for going through this, but it's certainly making sure we don't miss anything. So bear with us, guys.
Yeah. So they all fall. I love Steven's just immediate decision to drop and to just let go of Connie and just fall after them. Obviously, the sliding down the piping and stuff.
It's worth noting that the
awesome.
reason they fall is that I believe the white ship throws them off the hands, right? Because they're all in the hands.
Yeah,
that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember why they ended up falling in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's the reason.
And then everyone is saved through a combination of Perry's new flying technique and Lapis's wings, and they're all hanging off each other. And then
Lapis has Bismuth.
Yep.
Peridot has Connie, and then Peridot and Connie go to Steven and both yell his name at the same time, which was just also quite cool. It's just quite sweet, I thought.
Yeah, it's Peridot's.
Again,
Peridot's bin lid is being held at the bottom by Connie.
Yeah, and then they go to grab Steven, and I think, if memory serves, they grab him.
Yeah, I've got a shot of them right here where they're holding his hand and he's got the gems, and then it looks like the gems
then
slip.
fall.
Yeah, so it looks like. You know what? Oh, that's so clever. They fall in reverse order to when Steven gets them. So Ruby and Sapphire slip out of his hands first, then Pearl, and then Amethyst, and you see them going down in that order. So the closest one to Steven is Amethyst's, the next one down is Pearl's, and the next one down is Ruby and Sapphire, which is the order in which they're then rescued from the sky.
Yeah. And then Steven, I just love that he makes the active decision to let go of Connie and follow them down. Obviously, like I just said, the shield stuff looks boss.
Can I ask that question? Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Would the gems have not have survived that?
What,
Did he need to? They're in their gem form still, are they not?
Yeah, but he doesn't know where they're going. Like, he doesn't.
Right.
You know, he doesn't know.
I suppose
dropping them into an unknown hole.
And I suppose we do know that gems can shatter. So maybe that was the.
Yeah, for me it was more this panic and not wanting to lose them, an instinct more than specifically fearing they would shatter.
It does.
Although
it does
it's
all
worth
play out
noting,
very quickly.
It's worth noting that Rainbow Quartz 2 does catch them, so there might have been an element of the shattering. They are caught at the end to stop them hitting the ground. What's equally funny is the scene, I think it's later on, when Bismuth is falling and Peridot uses all her might to stop him from falling by catching the metal.
I'm going to keep correcting. I'm going to
hit or something.
I'm going to keep correcting your use of him. You've done it. You did it with Jasper earlier as well. I'm going to keep correcting you until you learn.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I've admitted, apologised, and it's absolutely something I need to stop doing.
So let's talk about the fusions. So the first one,
and you're right to correct me on it, by the way, as well.
Well, yeah, I feel bad every time I do it because I feel like I'm putting a lampshade on it and pointing out, which I don't want to do. But at the same time, I just feel like you're going to keep doing it and people are going to keep getting mad at you. I don't want that either. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Like, and
it only seems to be with the gems that are built like that, Jasper and Bismuth,
which makes it worse. It's horrific, and I feel shitty about it.
It's fine. I'm not trying to make you feel shitty. I'm trying to save you from the comment section on YouTube. But anyway.
Well, you're just making sure that everyone notices. No, I'm joking. They already do.
They definitely do. It sticks out like a sore thumb every time you do it. So Steven films with Amethyst first, which I think is clever because I think we've already seen that fusion, but because it looks different. You get a preview of Amethyst's new form before you see it. through the new appearance of Smoky Quartz. And it's also worth noting that is also true of Rainbow Quartz 2.0, who is wearing a similar jacket to the jacket Pearl has now adopted, which we'll get to in a second. But Smoky Quartz, first of all, he grabs Amethyst and learns that he can pull a gem out of that situation through fusion. Did you like that idea? How did that sit with you? Because
like I said earlier, I thought it was really clever. It's a really in-show explanation for it, and a way of seeing the fusions, and just it makes sense if it's an added power to fusion, and it's a added. I thought that was really cool.
So I wonder what that means then in terms of like, because physically I understand what's happening. He's fusing with the gem, which is drawing them out sooner. But there's this whole thing about them being ready. So what are they saying that? With the support of your friends, you can feel more comfortable with who you are quicker, and therefore come out of the gem, because a fusion is a metaphor for relationships, right? So for him to have fused them, it's about their relationship together. But we've also got a person who needs to be ready and accepting of who they are to unpoof, right? They need to be in a comfortable place, and that was the whole thing with Amethyst's poofing episode, where she poofed 100 million times and kept. It was about her finding confidence in herself, right? Some of the same themes that come up in this episode. So I'm trying to find if a fusion is a relationship, and that's a facsimile for that, or a metaphor for that, however you want to describe it, and being poofed and coming out is to do with like you finding who you are and who you want to be. How do those two ideas tie together? Is it comfort in friends will help you figure out who you are quicker? Is that the notion? I'm just trying to make it make sense. It makes sense from a sort of like a gem rules perspective, but Rebecca always puts everything has a dual meaning, doesn't it? It's always a facsimile for some sort of more relatable Earth emotional state or whatever, or something that we're familiar with. So does that make sense to what I'm saying, or am I off base?
Well, I think it's also a friend in need. Like it's very clear what the danger is, and they, to me, I think that what you said absolutely makes sense, and I think there's also an element of they hear Stephen explain that they're in danger, and certainly with Amethyst and him offer out that that hand that pulls them out and stuff.
Yeah,
and
okay.
It's interesting because with Pearl,
you win.
With Pearl, doesn't he also? Am I right in saying that "Come on, Pearl, dance with me" is what Rose said to Pearl?
Correct.
So there's also he's pulling on an emotional string there, which slightly contradicts with the powerfulness of her outfit. Which we'll get to that. And so Amethyst's new costume, awesome, great.
It's a great design, because someone pointed out on the I think it may be on the Discord or on Reddit somewhere, I can't remember, but someone pointed out that it's kind of like she's always half covered her gem, which is a bit of a hiding herself a little bit, and now the gem is fully on show.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's nice,
and I think that's really cool. And she's got little cut off jean shorts now with the stars on instead of on the knees, they're up on the thighs, I guess. It's a great design. It's really cool. It very much awesome. Suits her personality. And she gets to make a great joke immediately.
Yeah, I'll be fine is amazing.
Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And then she turns into an owl, because what pun
wonder
isn't complete without a fucking an immediate...
I did wonder whether that was the joke you were talking about. That's the only one that sprung to mind immediately when you said earlier there was a joke that you loved.
Oh, no. Well, it's right towards the end of the episode, the joke. Should I tell you now, since we're at it? I might as well.
Yeah, tell me now.
My favourite gag from this whole 42 minutes was, we're finally on Earth. We're going to be free from the homeworld and the diamonds. And then she I think it's Rhodonite. I think. Yeah. Looks out and sees the diamonds immediately facing her. She's like, well, we're cracked. And it's just, it's the most predictable joke, because the whole time she's making that speech, you know what's on the other side of that door. It doesn't even matter. It's just the funniest thing. I laughed so much. Not a sniff out my nose laugh because I was watching this alone. No. Uproarious, outright laughter at 3 a.m. My neighbours.
Were you watching it in the lounge then while Nadia slept? Right.
Yeah. I came home and when she was already in bed, she'd gone to sleep early. The plan was for us to watch it the very next night, but then my work schedule changed, so we're watching it tonight. So Nadia's still not seen this.
You've not seen it?
No,
Shit.
because she didn't want to watch it without me, even though I'd already seen it. But so I was just like, cool, so we'll watch it. We're gonna watch it tonight. We're gonna have curry and watch this again for the 5th time for me, I think. Hello everyone, Dan here. So this is where we're going to split the episode. What we decided in the end was that while this could easily make 3 1-hour 10-minute parts, which fits the length of episode we've been doing for Diamond Days, we didn't want to make you guys wait 3 weeks for the end of a discussion, because by the time the 3rd part comes out, which is mostly just going to end up being sort of the trivia, the wrap-up, that's it, if we do it that way, everyone will be well beyond, this episode. It'll be 3 weeks from now. It's just, it's 2 weeks really, but it's just, it didn't seem right. So we've decided to just make 2 sort of extra long episodes instead of 3 sort of normally sized episodes for Diamond Days at least. Obviously, if we're comparing to the earlier episodes, these are quite long. So yeah, thanks very much for listening. You can get us in all the usual places. There's a Patreon page if you'd like to help us cover our sort of bills for keeping this thing on iTunes and the various RSS feed based services. That's patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, I believe. youtube.com/nothingbutstatic UK. We're on Twitter @nothingbutstatic without the G, because Twitter has a weird character limit on names. What else? Oh, I'm at Doolan. I'm just at Doolan. No, I'm not. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham on Twitter. If you want to direct any ire straight towards us, of course, feel free to like, subscribe, smash that subscribe button, shatter that subscribe button. Someone in the comments said last week. Very good. Very good. Steven Universe version of my previous catchphrase. But yeah, obviously, come back in a week's time for more Boham chat. We discuss the remaining designs. We go through the rest of the episode. We break down the Steven being split from himself, and our interpretations of what that could mean. And we talk about the episode in the context of sort of we talk about it in a lot of wider contexts about like how it relates to sort of society, because the show is always an analogy for something, and we sort of look at some of that if I'm remembering correctly. One last thing I want to add is that I have since rewatched the episode with Nadia, as I discussed at the end of the part you've just listened to, and it's very obvious, it's very clear. They clearly say that the creatures that Pink has let loose on Homeworld are not of her creation, but they're organic creatures from a colony that she's obviously become quite fond of and brought home, which is obviously extremely in line with Pink, really reestablishes her character's behavior, fits with the her experience on Earth. It's insane that I ever thought it was something she'd created. Obviously, it makes way more sense to reestablish that. So before you guys comment, and you may have already done it, it's a long podcast, you may have heard that earlier in the episode and already put your comments down below, but I realised hours after recording that was the case. So yeah, there you go. So that is everything for this week on Steven University. Feel free to come back next week for the rest of our discussion of Change Your Mind.